Hi, my name is Melissa, and today I'm going to be talking about Spectrum 5.0, a metadata standard. Spectrum 5.0 is an open metadata standard that was developed by the Collections Trust in the United Kingdom. The standard is meant to be used by museums of any shape, size, or form. It can be used in a very small museum, or it can be used by large national museums. The goal of Spectrum is to provide standards on managing collections and how museums deal with these things on a day-to-day basis. Spectrum is used in over 100 countries and is being translated into multiple languages as the standard develops. So how does Spectrum work? Spectrum is based around 9 primary procedures, which they deem as actions museums are likely to deal with on a day-to-day basis, such as object collections, loans coming in, loans going out, etc. Spectrum has 9 primary procedures, but 21 total procedures. Each procedure included in Spectrum has a Spectrum standard that is required to be used if you're going to be Spectrum accredited, as well as suggested procedures for carrying out the action. On the procedure pages themselves, which we will look at later, the procedure includes a text-based version as well as an example of a workflow, which is very handy. The primary procedures covered by Spectrum include object entry, inventory, loans in, acquisition and accessioning, cataloging, loans out, location and movement control, object exit, and documentation planning. This is an example of one of the primary procedure pages. At the top, it tells you what primary procedure it is. In this case, it's object entry. And the page will also give you an easy to define definition of what the primary procedure is, as well as links to see the Spectrum standard, which is used to if you're going to be an accredited university in the eyes of the Spectrum standard, as well as the suggested procedure, which gives you the text-based layout as well as the example of the workflow, which we can see here. So at the top, it is basically the way a workflow works. It tells you exactly how you're going to deal with, in this case, object entry and things that may or may not come up. One of the things that Spectrum workflows also do is point you in directions of other non-primary procedures that you may want to deal with in the case that they come up. One of the nice things about Spectrum, and specifically Spectrum 5.0, is that it's been mapped or crosswalked to other metadata standards that are commonly encountered in the information field, such as ISAD-G, ISAAR. On the site, and this will be linked in the resource page as well, it gives you the crosswalk to how to get from Spectrum to ISAD-G and vice versa for the standards that they currently have. While Spectrum has many pros, it also has a few cons. Spectrum is an open standard, so it's constantly evolving and taking advice from the community and making sure that it's up to the best possible standards. It's also used worldwide, and so you're not going to have to worry about it being a very niche definition for the way you're working with your museum and it not being applicable to another if you're transferring objects. The website for Spectrum is also very easy to understand and lists step by step just how to carry out the procedures and what you should do in varying scenarios. Another very nice thing about Spectrum is it's not limited to your traditional, let's say, natural history museums. Spectrum is very keen to point out that they use the term museum, but what they really mean is any collection-based institution. So Spectrum is totally usable for very small collections, and you can have a non-commercial license to use Spectrum. Another very nice thing about Spectrum is it's not dependent on technology such as very specific software. Spectrum can be used in an entirely paper context, or it can be used, as most museums do, in a paper and technology-based sense. Some of the cons, however, for Spectrum are that it is available in a limited number of languages. This may not be an issue for many users if they're using English or some of the other major European languages, but it can be an issue. However, more languages are being updated with each iteration of Spectrum. Another issue is that there are a very small number of crosswalks currently available for Spectrum. Currently, it's ISAD-G, ISAAR, CPF, and NAR. While I'm sure in the future that more crosswalks will become available as the standard develops, currently it is limited to 3. And that is my presentation on Spectrum. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new.